Welcome to A New Era of Dentistry, the ultimate podcast for uncovering the latest trends, breakthroughs, and real-life stories in the dental industry, hosted by Ashley Bond with Wisdom, along with co-host Stephanie Neville. This podcast will explore hot topics, chat with industry leaders, and share the stories that are redefining how dental professionals enhance patient care and the dental practice environment. Let's get started and reshape the future of dental care together, one episode at a time. Hello to everybody. We are super excited about today's A New Era of Dentistry podcast episode. I guess we're always excited, but I'm personally extra excited because we're going to talk to the wonderful Rita Zamora of Rita Zamora Connections and Connect 90. She is going to share some wisdom, pun intended, with us pertaining to dental practice presence on social media, in the marketing space, and probably much more. Rita, thank you so much for being here, and I'll go ahead and just hand it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it. My goodness. Well, where would you like me to start?
Well, when people come to you, what are they the most worried about? And on the backside of that, what should they be worried about and keeping an eye on?
I think the biggest challenge that practices are having right now is a shortage of team members, shortage of time, and, how can they keep up their online presence without taking a lot of time? And you guys probably hear a lot of similar concerns from teams. And so we've come up with a couple of different options to help our teams. But, I think one of the things that's most important for people to know right now is that social media is not just for bringing in new patients. I think a lot of times in our mind, when I worked in the practice for many, many years, and I remember when it gets really busy, our instinct is to just cut down on marketing. We don't need to do marketing because we're already way too busy. But the thing about marketing is that you always have to be marketing, because it's not like a faucet where you can turn it off and on. You always have to be marketing. And especially for dental teams, the way that we need to think about social media is not just to bring in new patients, but it's also to bring in the right patients, and more importantly, to help you with that case acceptance. So a large part of my dental career I spent doing case presentation for big perio and implant cases. And those types of treatments, anything that is a treatment where the patient's not in pain, where they're like, here, take my money, because I need to get this taken care of. But anything that's a bigger investment for them, whether that be an investment in dollars or an investment in their time, if it's a treatment that's taking a lot of time away from their work, they really need to have a very high level of trust with the practice. So I really am working to get the word out there to teams that social media is not just marketing to bring in new patients. It shouldn't be making you busier with busy work. We have solutions for that, but it should be getting you a higher quality of patient that's a better fit for your practice, and most importantly, helping you with that case acceptance.
That's a super interesting point you bring up with case acceptance. We ran social media at my father's practice, and the big push was, it was all fun. We were making silly videos, funny pictures, culture. How do you explain to offices how to balance the social culture aspects, but then also case acceptance? That is something that we didn't do in our practice. And is there a perfect balance between how much fun, how much professional to post on social media?
Yeah, and I think there absolutely is. There's really, I like to say this in life and also in social media, that there's really no such thing as perfect if we're just really authentic. And so sharing your culture and your personality is fantastic. We always want to do that. But in addition to that, what we want to do is make sure that the patients know what we have to offer. So an example is, for many years working in the perio practice, we placed a lot of implants, surgically placed the implants, and then we would go to refer the patient back to get the crown on the implant, and the patient would say, my dentist doesn't do implants. And we're like, well, yes, they do, because that's why they sent you here. So we could put the implant in, and now you need to go back. And they would kind of argue with us sometimes, like, well, can I just stay here because my dentist doesn't do implants? So your patients don't know that you offer clear aligners, or that you can restore implants, or that you offer veneers, so they're seeing all these things on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, and they're like, oh, I'm going to go to this dentist, because they offer that. And so a part of using social media in a way that's going to benefit your practice for case acceptance, for example, is making sure that you're posting about those treatments that you want to do more of. And it's hard, I think, for a lot of teams, because they're like, it's easier for us to just do a fun skit, or, we're having a good hair day, so we're going to take some pictures or whatever. But you really have to be thinking ahead and getting comfortable repeating that theme of clear aligners, implants, whatever it is that you want to be known for, that you want to be doing more of.
How often would you say that offices should be posting on their social media, and then the frequency by subject matter, like the fun versus the educational content to bring educated patients to the practice?
Yeah, there's a good recipe that you can follow. I think right now what even Instagram is recommending is about 3 feed posts a week plus reels and stories. Since social media's, inception into dentistry, we've recommended 2 feed posts a week. Plus, sprinkle in your reels and stories as you can, because we all have limited resources. So I think a couple of posts a week, and then sprinkle in your stories and your reels as you can, is great. And I think if you think in terms of 80-20, 80% kind of more social type of content and 20% can be more promotional. But even that social content doesn't have to be something that's totally fun or funny. It can be Office Manager Appreciation Month, I think, is coming up soon, or Dental Hygiene Appreciation Month. And those are still, in our eyes, considered somewhat social, because you're not really selling people. And even like, I think Boss's Day is coming up soon, and you wouldn't think like, oh, is my dentist really a boss? But patients really love that, and they respond really well to that. They're celebrating the dentist boss, and girl boss if it's a female dentist. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get away with kind of more social topics, but still tie them into dentistry in some way.
Do you have any advice for something I've seen trending in social media, ironically Facebook, are bad reviews? Whether it's on Facebook or Google, a lot of people really don't seem to know how to handle that. So I would love your insight on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have an amazing resource to share with you that's been my go-to. I think it was last year, the American Dental Association published a reviews guide. And so this question has come up so many times over the years. How do we respond to a negative review? What's going to get us into trouble with regard to HIPAA? And, how can we diffuse this situation? And so I will include the link for you all to include in your show notes. I believe it's still available online. It's free. And the American Dental Association just did such an amazing job with this guide. I've been recommending it, just like crazy ever since it was released. I think it was about a year ago. But it will show you different examples of, here's the negative review and here's exactly how you respond to it. And I think even if you didn't refer to that resource, the 2 big takeaways are, number one, we definitely have to keep, HIPAA in mind when we're responding. And number 2 is just to remember to always keep your response as brief as possible. And that's advice that came from a dentist/attorney that I've spoken with on occasion. So, if you keep that in mind, that's going to be really helpful, even for good reviews, because I think a lot of teams are like, oh, this is a great review from my patient, so I can go ahead and just, comment on here. We loved having you as a patient, and go into detail and sort of ramble on. And then if you get a negative review, it's like, oh, okay, I'm just going to ignore that one. And so then, that doesn't look right either. So you're responding only to the positive review. So whether it's a positive or a negative review, you just want to keep your response super brief, and then I would add to that also anytime that we're having any kind of negative emotion that we just kind of take a step back and not respond right away until you have a chance to cool off, because that's not really ever going to come across well.
That right there is a great tip. Don't. Although from an outsider, they're very fun to read, those responses that are very emotionally driven. But at the end of the day, if it's your practice, taking your advice is very, very smart.
Yes, yeah. And my good friend Kevin Henry, who you all know, recently published an article on behalf of Dr. Bicuspid and talked about, team members really taking the time to cool off before you respond to one another, to different practices engaging. So that just kind of goes across the board.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you, now that, TikTok is so big, we have Instagram, there's Facebook, there's LinkedIn. I've heard, you don't want to post the same content on every channel. You want to differentiate it. Well, with the resources or the lack there of resources, how do you advise offices to manage all the different ways to share on social media that there are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I think the most important thing to consider is who is your ideal patient. I just spoke with a practice this week, and it's a newer doctor who took over an existing practice. And she said, we have a lot of 60 plus patients in our practice, but we really want to engage the 40 to 60-year-old market. That's really our ideal market. So we want to look at where are those 40 to 60-year-olds living in social media, and also just looking at the national statistics. So I think a lot of times we look at, what's our favorite tool? And then we say everyone must be using it just like we're using it. But we need to look at the national statistics like Pew Research. I mean, there's all sorts of different data sources, and look at where the majority of people in that age range are spending their time. And then that's where we want to invest our resources. I think sometimes for the doctor, they're like, well, let them just post wherever they want. It's going to end up getting seen. And that's not really the case, because we know, TikTok has a very specific audience. It definitely skews younger, and it's just a different, more of an entertainment tool than an informative tool. And so you're going to need to have totally different content there and be really comfortable making video all the time versus making posts on Instagram, which is a combination of that video, images, versus Facebook, where, you can still get away with the images, photos, and video as well. So I think, that's the best way to look at it, is where is my ideal audience spending their time? And also thinking about what type of content you're most comfortable sharing, because there are still a lot of teams out there that aren't comfortable taking photos or making video. So I'm like, which one, if we have to nudge you into one of these areas, what are you most comfortable with?
Where would you recommend people go to get those statistics? I know you can Google a lot of different things, of course, but you'll get different statistic based on what website you go to.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the, long-standing trusted resources is Pew Research, PEW. They've been around for a long time. They're quoted in the Wall Street Journal. I think any time that you're looking for, I think there's Statista.com too. They're pretty reputable, and there's a lot of good sources out there, and they're generally going to kind of cross over and share the same thing. We know the top three are Facebook, Instagram, and then when we're looking into a younger audience, we're looking at TikTok.
I love that you put out like the 80-20 and how many posts per week and how to find what channel to post on. How do you see it work best in the practice whose responsibility it is? Is it one person that's like the social media guru? Do you spread it across the team? Is the dentist a part of that? What have you seen succeed most in practices?
It's kind of really across the board it depends on who has the time and the interest. So ideally, it's someone who is interested in social media, because every once in a while we'll have a team member that's like, oh my gosh, I can't stand social media. Or, I try and spend as little time on there as possible. And it's like, okay, this is kind of a red flag, because nobody wants to do a job that they don't like, right? Whether it's assisting or answering phones or whatever. So finding someone who likes it, ideally, who enjoys it, and maybe even who's passionate about it, that's great. We've worked with a lot of dental spouses, actually, who want to help grow the practice, and they're working from home, and, they know the practice and the doctor through and through. So that's great. Sometimes it is the doctor themselves that really kind of wants to see, what all does this entail, so I can delegate it effectively. And other times it could be the dental hygienist or the office manager, a treatment coordinator. So it really just depends on who has the time and the interest.
Yeah, I think the interest is so important too, because like you said, not everyone is on social media all the time or even enjoy it. So
Yeah.
I think having someone that's passionate about social media and is a user of social media makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any
Yes.
advice, like pertaining to delegation of responsibilities? There's the posting, but then there's the commenting and answering questions. And I think especially younger people, although they may not always be on Facebook, they're more likely to DM a question or go that route to make an appointment or things like that. Do you advise people in offices to monitor that at a certain frequency, or do you have any tips or tricks there?
Yeah, I think a lot of teams are still just trying to really grasp how important it is to respond to comments. I think there's a lot of teams that are still just posting and like, whatever, if somebody posts a comment, then that's great, but we don't generally respond, And I think our patients understand that, we're in the healthcare field and you may not necessarily be spending a lot of time on, directly on social media, but it has really become an expectation that people want to get a response, whether it's through a DM or through a comment. And so I think, for many teams, I tell them just try and check in at least, once or twice a week and respond to every single comment. Of course, you want to make sure that you're responding to those messages, the DMs as well. But responding to comments is something that, like Instagram, for example, all the platforms are looking to see if you're a real person. Are you actually engaging, or are you just posting content and then never interacting with any other accounts? And then they may, say, well, why are we showing your content to other people when you're not actually utilizing the platform? So that's one of the big things that you kind of have to do today if you want to get visibility.
That makes so much sense. I never really thought about the rank. Yeah, go ahead, Ashley.
100%. No, I was that is such a good point. Just having a plan, I think, is so important, and not winging it probably week after week on who's going to do it and hoping someone does.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help offices come up with that plan so that they can execute well when they're trying to have a better presence on social media?
Yeah, well, definitely the first thing to do is to have a system in place. So having an online, we utilize an online content calendar, and we're always working a month ahead. So, right now, it happens to be, near the end of the month. We've already gotten the future month's content done. We've already had that done for probably the last 10 days or so. And so it's planning your content in advance. And it doesn't mean that you can't be spontaneous and have fun and do those skits, or maybe it's someone's birthday, somebody brought something by to surprise them. You still want to do that too, but you're hitting those most important points. So what are the things that you really want to make sure that you say? And like we talked about a little bit earlier, to help with case presentation, if you want to make sure that people know that you're doing clear aligners or implants or whatever, you want to make sure that you're posting about that a couple of times a month. So you'll put that in your content calendar. And then those special days like National Dentist Day or National Dental Hygiene Appreciation Month, or giving a shout out to your office manager for Office Manager Appreciation Month, making sure that you have all of that content in there. And so planning ahead is the only way that you can save time and be strategic. Otherwise, there's a lot of team members that are like, oh, I'm just going to do it on my phone real quick. And it's like, you can never remember, what you posted last week or, a couple weeks ago. You're like, how many times do we post about implants? Oh, never, So making sure that you have a plan in place and that one person is responsible for that content calendar. And then from there, that content calendar, you can easily replicate, that post for the different channels. And I think, Ashley, you mentioned earlier, shouldn't you have different content for different channels? And ideally you could, but at the end of the day, you've got your ideal patient that you want to attract. Maybe it's that 40 to 60-year-old, they're probably, the majority of them are going to be spending their time on Instagram and Facebook. And then we also recommend that you post content to Google Business because it's not a social media channel, but you can post content there. So you absolutely want to do that. And then also we're recommending now that teams have a presence on LinkedIn as a company page, because that can help you attract local talent. And it's just one more breadcrumb that's out there. And so with these content calendars and scheduling tools, you click a button and it'll make a copy of your post for these different channels. And you can always adjust your graphics or your caption, for the different platforms. If you're on Instagram, you want to add a few hashtags, you can do that there, to kind of customize your content for each platform.
It gave me a good visual. Well, I was going to ask, so if a practice needs your help or a team reaches out to you for help, what does that relationship look like? And then I want to definitely hear how they can get a hold of you to get your help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first thing we start out with is, and first of all, they can book an appointment with me online. So if you visit connect90.com, we have our online scheduling there. You can pick a time to have a conversation. On our intake form, we have just a couple of questions, and one of them is, what are your challenges? And that's usually for me really helpful, because then when we finally do connect, I can talk about, you talked about how you don't have time, or, whatever that challenge is. They're having trouble with consistency, or they're feeling like they're not really benefiting from what they're sharing. So from there, I'm able to tell, are they a better candidate for our Connect 90 program or for our custom social media services? So we have our Connect 90 program, which is great for someone who has a team member that wants to participate, but they also need a system. The doctor wants a way to kind of hold them accountable and delegate really easily. So that is a great program for them, because it gives them the content calendar, content ideas, everything that they need to be able to personalize their content for the different channels. Or if they say, we're just overwhelmed, we don't have time, we don't have anyone on the team who wants to do this, but we know we want to boost our presence, then they might be a better fit for our custom services, for example. And if they wanted to try the Connect 90 program, we offer a 30-day complimentary trial. And we don't take a credit card. There's no obligation. So sometimes they'll do that and say, oh, we've got this. We really love it. It's so easy. It's month to month. There's no long-term commitment. And other times they're like, oh gosh, there's no way we could do this. Can you just do it for us? So it's a good way for us to determine what's going to be the best fit for them.
That is amazing that you offer that. So anyone that's listening to this, there's no risk to try it out. And I think we all need so much help in coming up with content and not having to recreate the wheel every single day. It seems like, where then it becomes so daunting that you just don't do it. And it's so important to have a presence on social media these days. I feel like more people are on social media than probably what they're Googling. I see people asking social media, like, what dentist to go to, instead of Googling now what dentist to go to.
It's so true. They
Yes.
friends ask, and then you get pages tagged, so it really hits home how important that is. And speaking to the help piece as well, if you have questions beyond this, or you're driving and maybe didn't hear Rita's portion, you can always get in touch with us at Wisdom at info@withwisdom.com. We can put you in touch with Rita or anything else that you need. Rita also attends a lot of conferences along with Ashley. They both are in the speaking and consulting circles and always present, always helping people out there. So don't hesitate to reach out to either of them in that way if you need anything at all.
Rita, thank you so much for being on and talking to dentists and office managers and dental teams about their presence on social media. I want to tell them, though, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you to learn more about what you do?
Yeah, the best place to reach me is at our connect90.com, our website where we offer the online scheduling. They can take a look at the calendar and book an appointment to just have an exploratory call. We can talk about their needs, and I would love to hear from them.
Amazing. So everyone go right now, set up a call with Rita. And if you have any questions at all, you can send us an email at info@withwisdom.com, and we'll either address them or make sure that they get over to Rita. Thank you so much again for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know I will continue to send people to Wisdom as well for your awesome download. So I want to say thank you. I know a lot of my clients and people in my network have been so excited to take advantage of the downloads that you offer. So I wanted to make sure that I said thank you for those too.
Of course. And thank you for sharing them. If you haven't seen Rita on social media, go follow her now. She shared our free downloads link, so connect with her there as well and get some free resources for your office. So thank you again, and we will talk to you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's journey through a new era of dentistry with your host, Ashley Bond. With Wisdom and their network of industry leaders, each episode offers fresh insights and support in the evolving world of dentistry. Subscribe, stay tuned, and transform your career, practice, and patient experience. Until next time, keep innovating, keep caring, and stay smiling.